Hello and welcome to the 9th episode of the Addiction Free Naturally podcast. My name is Graham Hoppett and I welcome you from wherever you are in the world. Today, I'm going to discuss the power of forgiveness in recovery. Now, this is such a powerful subject. It doesn't just affect those in recovery. If you want to share this with friends and family, forgiveness is a real game changer, but it's particularly important to you, obviously, if you're in recovery. So we're going to talk about why you should forgive, and also I'm going to talk about the main method that I have used to forgive myself and others. And that way we're going to be able to escape our prison of addiction, or it'll be certainly one of the tools to do so. Not forgiving someone is akin to poisoning yourself. It really is. As long as you don't forgive, you're literally poisoning yourself. It's like injecting yourself with poison. If you want to progress in life, and certainly, if you want to overcome any addiction, whether it's substance or behavior, you have to learn how to forgive yourself and others, and you need to learn to let go of the past. And by forgive, I'm not just talking about others. I really am emphasizing the fact you've got to learn to forgive yourself at the deepest possible level. If you keep at it, if you keep not forgiving, really what you're doing is you're injecting that poison deeper and deeper into yourself. Hating someone who hurt you is really like taking poison, hoping that they will die. It's insanity, isn't it? It's like me being mad at someone who hurt me, and they're actually out having a good time somewhere, so they don't care that I'm mad. That doesn't hurt them, it hurts me, doesn't it? Now, I'm going to keep this at a very personal level. I'm going to reference my first wife, who created immense pain for me. Now, when I do this, my vocabulary is very specific. And what I mean by that is, when I'm talking about my first wife here, it's not so that I can put her down. It's so that I can help you guys. Yeah, if I was talking about her as I'm going to with a good motive, that's one thing. But if I was on here just slagging her off for the sake of slagging her off, then clearly I wouldn't have forgiven her, or I haven't forgiven her. And forgiveness comes at all different levels, as we will find out as we go through this. So let me just give a couple of background instances just to give a flavour. I left my first wife just before our 21st wedding anniversary. It was a horrible, horrible marriage. I really shouldn't have married. I was too young. I married for the wrong reasons. I stayed for the wrong reasons, primarily my children. And I can only tell you, even with all the forgiveness I've done, I can only tell you really two good things about my wife, and that is my two children. So I'm being completely transparent. However, I've really benefited from forgiving her and letting her go. So it doesn't mean I still have to like her, but I have forgiven. So a couple of instances, when I was signed off for work for the first month, when I stood up against the bullying regime at BMW Park Lane, which is a story you may have heard me share before, her remarks to me was, "You're pathetic." So I was someone who was rarely off sick. At that time, I actually felt I really needed some support, and the best she could do was tell me I was pathetic. So I'd gone from a workaholic, working all hours under the sun, to put a roof over our family's head. So I'm not saying I was doing anything special. I was just being the man, being the worker, whatever you want to call it. But in that moment, I thought I might get some support, and I didn't. I was just being told I was pathetic. She almost, moving on a couple of years, she almost then had me sent to prison. Now, I had spent the previous 2 years after separation. I'd paid everything. I'd had a bit of a payoff when I eventually escaped BMW. So I negotiated a payoff because I went off with burnout. So I'd lived on this payout. I hadn't worked for 2 years. In fact, I didn't work for many years afterwards. I was so burnt out, so mentally exhausted, which is what led to the addiction. And she wanted more. So she had everything, in the sense that I was I'd spent 2 years paying all of her expenses and mine. So I'd taken out another mortgage on a house. So I was paying my mortgage. I was paying her mortgage on what was the family home. I was paying for all of her living expenses, all of my living expenses. I obviously paid for all our children's things. I paid for 2 holidays for her. And she, in the court hearing, she wanted more. She couldn't understand, and her lawyers couldn't understand, well, where is the money? They couldn't seem to work out. For me, it seemed quite simple. I'd been paying 2 of everything for 2 full years, and I had no income coming in. So surely that would have taken a big chunk out of the money I had been paid as severance pay. And they couldn't have that, so they put me on 7 days' notice, and I was going to be sent to prison if I could not give a detailed explanation of all the money. And, you know, I had made it difficult because I'd had multiple bank accounts and I was transferring money backwards and forwards to try and get the best rates. But all of that money had been spent on our 2 families together, if that makes sense. You know, there was nothing untoward. So that was my darkest day. I mean, after that court hearing, I went to find a solicitor and I literally broke down in tears in that solicitor's office. And because I couldn't see what was going on. And, you know, the psychiatrist I'd had, he was telling me I was depressed. So I had a lot of anger, you know, with my wife because of, well, a very unhappy marriage for 20 years. And then, like, the fact I was thinking she's sending me to prison or trying to get me sent to prison because she wants more than I've already given her, was just, you know, devastating for me. And my first wife went on to remarry, as it happened. And, you know, I was pleased for her. So she had let go. But, you know, really, I was still, even though I was the one that had chosen to leave her, I was still very angry. So I was hurt and angry, and even more so when the divorce went through, because she ended up with everything, and I do mean everything, and I ended up with carrying 100K's worth of debts as a consequence because I had to pay off the mortgage. So she then lived mortgage free from that point onwards, whereas I had to service 100K's worth of debts, and I had to pay rent for somewhere to live, and I had no income. So I was pretty pissed, to say the least. And, you know, that's what I'm saying. I'm going back. That's not my emotions now, but I'm trying to paint a picture that I was really angry. You know, I was very, very angry because I'd lost everything. And even though I wanted her to have a good share, in fact, I got rid of my first solicitors because they wanted me to fight for 50-50. I got rid of my first solicitors because they wanted me to have 50-50 and I wanted to have more. I didn't realize I was going to lose everything. And that's a separate story, actually. So even though all of that happened, you know, I'm at the point where, oh my God, what do I do, sort of thing. So I've done a lot of forgiveness because for the first period of that time, 5 years in particular, I guess I was very, very, very angry. Now, let's be transparent or even further. There are levels of forgiveness, because even though I'd done so much forgiveness with the method I'm going to tell you about, something come up only 2.5 years ago, and that got me angry with her again. So it's like, even though I'd done so much release and felt I'd forgiven her, you never know, there's still some little bits left. So this is a continuing process. But the fact is, all the time that you're not forgiving someone fully means that that person, you know, is carrying a level of control over your life. So that's why it's so important to forgive. And I'm going to tell you how I done that very, very shortly. Now, there is another thing that we need to be aware of. You know, lots of people, they actually do want to forgive, which is great, but they don't know how. And the reason is they often don't know how is they are stuck in the place of, like I was, that, God, I don't really want to, you know, say sorry to my ex-wife. You know, how can I forgive my ex-wife when she's hurt me so much? We have to face the truth. You know, she'd hurt me so much. I was so unhappy. The thought of going to prison and just because I couldn't give her the figures in the way that she felt they needed to be done, or the court felt they needed to be done. So I was angry. So it's like, even though I on the one side I wanted to, you were sort of saying, well, why should I? Because it may be you're trying to forgive someone that's inflicted a lot of pain on you, whether that's physically or mentally, or maybe they've even committed a crime against you. You know, if someone has done something horrible, maybe it goes to the stage where it's actually illegal or something. You know, we're all in different situations. So it's like, I don't really want to forgive, you know, I hate them, as indeed I hated my first wife. So you get to the stage where you've got to face the truth. Because the thing is, we can't get anywhere meaningful in life without facing the truth. We have to face the truth of where we are in the moment right now. And a relationship is two-sided. You know, you have no control over someone else. I had no control over my wife. In fact, a great exercise is if you draw up a circle around your feet, well, the only thing you can control is what's in that circle, i.e. is you. So we have to face our truth, and we can't get where we need to if we don't face that truth about where we are right now. So forgiveness is part of facing your truth, but part of admitting where you are right now. And it's not about, forgiveness is not about necessarily feeling differently about that person. You know, you don't have to start to like them or to respect them. And you're not absolving them from what they did wrong. Let's just be clear about that. You know, if they've done something wrong, especially if it's a crime, you're not absolving them from the responsibility. You're just forgiving them, because actually they were, in their own world, they were doing the best that they could according to their values, their beliefs, and their vibration. So sometimes it's a hard pill for us to swallow, but you're not agreeing with what they've done. You know, you're not absolving them of their error, their responsibility, or any crime, or whatever they done. You're not absolving from that. You know, they're accountable for that. But what we're doing is we're releasing the negative energetic connected with that person or with that event. And the forgiveness is actually for you. It's not for them, even though you're forgiving them. And I should also say at this stage, you don't need to forgive them. You don't need to be with them physically. The process I'm doing is something you do with yourself. So you don't need to go and see them or anything like that. But you're doing this for you, because it's time to get out of your own pain. It's time to get out of your own bitterness. And when you start growing spiritually, as most people actually do in their recovery, and I'm not advocating religion, spirituality, or anything. If you're an atheist, that's absolutely fine. But you're going to grow in some way, and I'm calling that like a spiritual journey. And I certainly didn't learn this overnight. I hung on to my hate for my first wife way too long, and now I don't stay mad at people. It doesn't mean you can never get mad, but like I release it in a flash. It's like I'm not wasting any more of my life being mad at people. It's completely unproductive. So why should we forgive? Well, anger, blame, guilt, it keeps you stuck in victim mentality. You probably know lots of victims, and you don't want to be stuck in victim mentality. So there's one reason to quit. You just don't want to operate from victim mentality. You'll never get what you want as long as you're a victim. And people don't like victims either. So there's a double-edged sword. You don't want to be a victim. But the second thing is any abuse, any trauma, any type of addiction or grief or guilt or shame that you're actually carrying, even as a consequence of the addiction, any heartbreak you've got, everything gets stored within us. It's like stored in our cell memory. So therefore, that can create itself sickness and disease. So there's two great reasons not to hang on to bad things in your life, to let them go, to forgive them and move on. But we have to remember, this is also about us. It's like, if you're angry with yourself all the time, you need to forgive yourself too, because that's going to have the same devastating impact. Is that making sense? You know, all of this hatred, anger, guilt, shame caused by anything in your life is causing you at a deep, deep cellular level. Now, it's also creating an outer reflection that essentially causes more suffering and pain. So if you're going around with all of this anger in you because you haven't forgiven someone or haven't forgiven yourself, you are reflecting that and you are creating more of that in your world. That's absolutely a fact. You know, we're attracting where our attention is. We're attracting where our internal attention is. So I think we've answered why we should forgive, because, you know, we don't want to carry around with that. And if we forgive, we release all of that burden. And most of us, the problem is most of us are trying to change the outer world. You know, like we're trying to change that person over there, or we're trying to change our boss over here, or our spouse. When it's our inner thinking, it's our inner beliefs, it's our inner being which needs to change, because it's that inside of us which we're reflecting out into the world. Does that make sense? Because we'll never change circumstances around us until and unless we change our internal being. Now, this is what helped with me. So I'm sharing with you the process that really changed my life. It was like a game changer. It's called Honoponopono. Now, I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing that 100% right, and it doesn't matter. And the other thing on this, look, I don't edit my podcasts. I just record them and they come out how they are. So if I pronounce that wrong and you know the right way, that's great. Well done for you. But for me, I don't get hung up on it. If I make a mistake, it's like what I know. It's a fantastic process to forgive. It's actually a Hawaiian practice of reconciliation and forgiveness. You can look it up online. It's got thousands and thousands of testimonials. You know, the crazy thing is this practice is so simple. It's the most simplest practice you could ever imagine, but it's also the most profound that I've ever seen. And, you know, I've been using this for a number of years. It's how I used to heal some very intense wounds, particularly with my first wife, and it's how I've dealt with healing minor situations in my life as well, because you can use it for so many things. Now, I'm not religious, I'm on a spiritual journey. So, however, this process is going to work whether you're religious, whether you're spiritual, or even if you're an atheist. It just works. It's brilliant. And as I said, there's loads of testimonials if you want to go and look it up further. And let's get going. It is as simple as this. You know, you literally say this process. You say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And here's the thing, you can't get it wrong, because you can say this in any order you want. And in fact, if you look online, you'll probably see it written in a different order, and you'll say, oh, Graham's got it wrong. There isn't a right or wrong. It's just effectively these 4 statements. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And you can say them in whatever order you want. Now, you can also put the person's name in there. You know, I forgive myself, so I often say, Graham, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. Or I'm sorry, Graham, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And if I'm trying to forgive something around a person, and when I say forgive, it might be that you're forgiving yourself around something with the person, but I would visualize that person. I have that person in my awareness as I'm saying this. So it's like, let's say I've had an instance with a woman called Janice, for want of an argument, for want of a name, right? So I'd visualize Janice and I'd just say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And the great thing is, you can do this anywhere, any place, anytime. I mean, I've done this walking dogs, so I'm walking the dogs and saying this out loud to myself, thinking about the person that I'm trying to resolve an issue with. And trust me, I've spent hours and hours doing this in relation to my first wife. And that is what got me to a situation of neutrality. And as I said, there's going to be levels of forgiveness. So, you know, we separated 20 years ago. Certainly for the first 5 years, I carried around deep hatred for that woman. as I said, I can only tell you two good things about it, our two children. So I carry deep resentment, deep hatred. But using this very process, I was able to take that down a notch. And then you do it some more, you take it down another notch. But there's always levels. And as I said, 2.5 years ago, something popped in, it made me angry about it. So I've done it again. So it's an ongoing process, depending how deep the issue is. But it literally is just saying those words. There's numerous translations for those that like to know a little bit of information. I mean, the Hawaiian word Honoponopono translates into English simply as correction. It's setting things right, to put things in order. It essentially means that there's been a cause, some sort of a cause, and we're making something right. So we're addressing what's gone wrong, the cause, and then we're making something right. That is essentially what this practice does. And the great thing is that this practice is so simple because you're literally just saying those words. You don't even need to know exactly what you're fixing. So, you might know you've got an issue with, say, your sister or your brother or a child. You don't need to specifically know what the issue is, but you can just use this process, thinking about them, speaking out loud in a private place, and it will have an impact. And it is about how we're all vibrating, because this is going to change your vibration. So essentially what you're doing is you're asking for forgiveness, you're asking for reconciliation, whatever it may be for, whatever the issue is that has occurred in either your life or someone else's life. And as I said, you don't necessarily need to know the cause of it, you just have to ask for the forgiveness. And the statements are so simple. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. It's brilliant. Honoponopono offers opportunity to release and clear all your past baggage. I mean, what could be better? And it works. It works. It's brilliant. But it's a practice. You have to practice it, and that's what it's all about. Keep using it. It's no good doing that statement like once or twice and expecting like a deeply damaged relationship to resolve overnight. It's about practice and continuity. If I was out, I might go and walk in the park and I might do this for sort of 30 minutes non-stop or something. It's like the more energy you put into something, and you have to say it like you mean it. You can't just say it. So mean it, and it will start to happen. Even though to start with, obviously, particularly with my wife as the example, it's like, no, I didn't mean it to start with, but over time you get into it and the feeling changes. So instead of really hating that person, you can really start to release it and clear up all your old issues. It's brilliant. You see, all this grief, all this guilt, shame, heartache, everything gets stored within us. That's creating our outer reflections, as I mentioned earlier. So the sooner you clear it up with a process like this, the better. And you want to forgive everyone. You don't say, well, no, they were bad or not, they didn't hurt me that much. Forgive everyone. Forgive everyone that you feel has ever hurt you. And most of all, forgive yourself. You need to stop carrying all of that old grief, that shame, that guilt, that hatred for yourself, that internal voice you've got. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. This is the time to really let it go. Because we carry so much, don't we? So you can use this for any negative emotional situation. Guilt, shame, jealousy is another great one. Anything, any emotion or situation you can use this for, and it definitely helps to dissolve it. Definitely. Forgiveness of yourself and others will release you from that prison of the past, because we accumulate so much over our lifetimes. Many of us have gone through different abuse, trauma, and that's led to addiction in my case, and that's probably why you're here, because you're an addict, because that's what this is all about. And all this grief, all this guilt, shame, everything is still being held in yourself. So the sooner you can release it, the better. Your outer world may look very chaotic, but it first starts within your own belief systems, your own psyche, because everything is connected. So using this practice to release stuff, to forgive yourself, forgive others, this practice really does offer you the opportunity to release and clear issues up. And we do this by taking full responsibility. That is what's going to release you. The truth will set you free. And as I said, one of the things is, you've got to be truthful. You've got to find that truth. So instead of looking for blame, which is probably what many of us done in the past, so instead of looking for blame and blaming others and looking on everything on the outside world, you've got to look internally. So start looking internally and being yourself, because it makes no sense to try and change your outer world when what's causing it is what's going on internally, your inner thinking, your inner beliefs. And this practice allows you to go within it, allows you to go really deep within. When you start to say those words, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, things will shift for you. And you can say this as many times as you want. There's really no rules about this and nothing you can get wrong. Just do it. Now, there is a difference between forgiveness and acceptance, yeah? Forgiveness is really letting go, but acceptance is, you're not absolving them for what they have done wrong. You're just releasing them from that the negative energy, and that's letting you go. Forgiving someone does not mean that you condone their behavior. Yeah, that might be a legal issue, or even if it's not a legal issue, you're not condoning it. You're just forgiving because it's releasing you. It really has nothing to do with the other person. This is all about forgiveness for you, to release you from that negative energy so you can really move on. Because the truth is, when life is not flowing freely, the chances are you're probably holding on to something from the past. But taking responsibility for our own feelings and reactions is literally mastering our ability to respond. And when we do that, we learn to consciously choose rather than react. And that's why it's essential to keep growing. That's why I emphasize the Be Do Have methodology, which I've shared in a previous podcast, because who we are becoming is the key to our evolution, and it's the key to overcoming addiction and staying sober outside of addiction. When we let it go, everything will be free for us. By forgiving everyone, when you love yourself, you become your authentic self. And that's what ultimately you want to do. You want to really be in the best possible situation for yourself. And you can truly become your authentic self by releasing all of this past crap that you're carrying around. And it all starts with forgiveness. So Honoponopono is the primary method that I've used. There is another method that I use, which I will mention very quickly, which is you can write letters, which you don't need to send. You write letters to the other person, and that means you can maybe be more elaborate in the letter, saying you hurt me because, and I'm letting you go and releasing it, and then you burn the letter. So I've also used that method, but my preferred method is the Honoponopono method. And maybe some of you have heard of Marianne Williamson. She's actually the author of one of my favorite quotes, which was used by Nelson Mandela, the fear quote, as it was called. But she talks about praying for people's happiness for 30 days. And this might appeal to, especially when the word prayer is used, this might appeal to the more religious people. But whether you call it a prayer or a mantra, this has the same validity, the same idea really than Honoponopono, because if you're praying for someone for 30 days, it is going to release something. People say it's hard to forgive, but if you're living with anger and blame, that's way harder, isn't it? So what Marianne Williamson is really saying is, like, prayer is your greatest power to change the world. Pray for that person for 30 days, and one of two things is going to happen. Either you will behave differently about that person, or you won't care. The alchemy will effectively occur. So this is as hard or as easy as you want to make it, but isn't it easier to forgive rather than carry around that anger and blame, which is what I did with my first wife for so many years. But when I learned to forgive, it makes life so much easier. So the message, which I hope has been useful in this podcast today, is let go of the past. And one of the biggest things you need to let go of is those people that have hurt you, or you feel aggrieved in some way. Forgive them. Forgive them. And you're not forgiving them for them per se. This process is to help you. But when you forgive, it dissolves the anger inside, it dissolves the resentment that you're walking around with every day. And that is, remember, reflecting out into the world, into everything you do. So if you're an angry, resentful, bitter person, you are sending out that to everyone that you come into contact with. So the best way to deal with this is to forgive. And that is what I've learned to do, particularly with my first wife, who was my biggest antagonist. So I can wholly recommend the Honoponopono process. As I say, probably not even pronouncing that right, and I don't care, because it's not about whether I can pronounce the word right, it's what it's done for me in my life. So these are very authentic podcasts. I don't edit them. So you're seeing me as I really am. But I cannot recommend this process strongly enough. Get out there, start forgiving, forgive everyone in your life, literally everyone, because you don't want to keep injecting poison, do you? You don't want to keep injecting poison into your life. So it's time to forgive everyone. It really is time to forgive yourself, because you are the key person. When you have forgiven yourself, you're going to be much more kind and compassionate to other people around you. And when you have forgiven people, you start to no longer feel like you're controlled like a puppet. You're truly moving towards that empowered, authentic self that you truly are. So get out there and start forgiving yourself and others right away. My name is Graham Hoppett. It's been a pleasure to share how I helped myself by forgiving myself and forgiving other protagonists in my life. If you want to reach out in any way, if you need my help or would like some one-to-one coaching, you can look at the links below wherever this happens to end up, or you can email me at graham@grahamhoppett.com. It's my pleasure to serve you today, and I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. So have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. I love you guys, and I'm asking you to go out there and forgive those which have helped you, because it's going to help you so much. Have a wonderful day.